So looking at spend purely over the last 2 years for our Facebook marketing and advertising, we spent £3,000. The return on sales is just shy of £150,000. My name is Daniel Devall. I am the Managing Director of Devall Son Funeral Directors. We're based in the Nuneaton, Coventry and surrounding areas. When I took over as Managing Director, and probably way before that actually, when I was trying to establish myself within the family business, probably one of my biggest drivers, I suppose, was to leave my own legacy in the business. My parents had worked tirelessly for over 30 years to establish themselves as one of the leading funeral directors in their area. Their reputation, they developed such a wonderful reputation within their local community, and they established themselves as individuals within that local community as well. I think probably what I wanted to achieve was something similar, but really putting my own stamp on that. And kind of one of the bigger things that I was looking at was, well, how do I continue this wonderful legacy that my parents have kind of established, and how do I move a business forward that is thriving in one particular area, but effectively we probably had reached a cap on the number of funerals and number of families that we could reach out to. My biggest goals and what we were able to achieve back in 2017 was to open the second branch in a completely different location, the city of Coventry that borders Nuneaton, and knowing that digital would help us to get the brand awareness out there, and also to reach out to people and get them to see our services and get them to see our website, and understand who we were as a business in a much better way. The avenues that digital opens up in comparison to a full page spread on a newspaper is huge. It's interactive. It can be modified at any given one point. You're able to specifically target in and home in on a certain demographic or a certain age group, and this was all something that I understood you could do, but I had no real comprehension or no understanding of how we were going to get there or how we were going to do that, and probably trying to find the right person to hold our hand along that journey and really help us to achieve the goals that we wanted and on a digital level, was one of the hardest decisions that we had to make. So one of the big challenges when I kind of took over from my parents in the general day-to-day running was time management. We were trying to grow as a business. The modern day funeral director is so much more intense, and there are so many more elements to bringing a funeral together than what there were even just maybe 10 or 15 years ago. The consumer and the clients and the families that we look after demand more. They demand more time. They demand us to be more attentive and quicker to respond to certain questions, queries and concerns. What I've personally found is that the funeral industry is always a little bit behind the rest of the world. There was a huge period of everything becoming a bit all-consuming, keeping on top of the business, and then this new world of digital being thrown into the mix. And to be honest, I mean, and that's me, and I would like to think that because of my age, I'm a little bit more au fait with the digital age. I'm pretty handy around a computer, and I thought I knew quite a lot about online marketing. But actually looking back now and knowing what I know now, I had no clue. I had no clue. And actually, I've got to hold my hands up, and probably my mum and dad won't want to hear this, but there was a period where we probably did chuck a good few bit of money at certain things, and it didn't work because we weren't educated. We didn't know enough about what we were doing. We thought that we were doing the right thing because we saw everyone else kind of going down this certain path, but actually when we broke it down, no, we probably were making a bit of a fundamental mistake. Probably the biggest epiphany for me and the biggest light bulb moment was we were paying all this money out, but we had no way of tracking where any sort of leads were coming from. If we want to go to the next level and move things forward with digital, then we also had to make some really fundamental changes internally. And this is the additional thing that Chris brought to us, was it wasn't just the digital assistant that we had, but it was the internal process system of tracking every sort of lead that comes in. He encouraged us to look at using CRM software to track where the leads had come from, how long the consumer was taking to make the purchase with us, all of the, and even more so now. We switched everything up in a very short period of time with Chris's assistant, and what that working with Chris and that digital process brought was brand new leads that we probably would have never have had the option of ascertaining, but then B, once they come and make that phone call, or they make that effort to get in contact with us through the internet or via email or telephone call, that we do all we can to make sure that that client is looked after correctly, and that we're attentive and we're quick and we're efficient in getting back to them. And that is something that, working with Chris, we have certainly brought on board, and we're almost obsessive over it now, because we want to make sure that we don't let anyone down, purely from a customer service point of view. When we first initially got together to discuss kind of what the plan was going to be, we decided that Facebook would be the ideal place to start. We kind of seemed to get a good bit of that video right. We tried to be as sensitive as possible with the messaging and how the video came across. But I've got to be honest, there was, working with Chris, we probably pushed things to a slightly more advanced level from a let's call it a salesy point of view. Although I don't like that terminology, there was definitely an element of having to pick certain key words out, or certain key messaging out, that would stop the consumer from scrolling past our advert. But I think what the nice thing was that I just wouldn't have got from any other company is that face-to-face approach, and that taking the time, and Chris taking the time to invest himself in our business and invest himself into our industry. We were able to find this really great balance of pushing the boundaries with the marketing kind of dialect, but also finding this really lovely, soft and gentle approach that is in keeping with the genre of funerals and bereavement. And I think we, for a first go, we did pretty good. It then started to engage, and in our local area there was hundreds of shares and so many different comments, and this all in turn developed into fantastic leads, like healthy leads that people were genuinely interested in, wanting to find out more on funeral plans. We then looked at creating a email campaign, and this is something that was certainly completely new to me, something that definitely intimidated me a little bit, but actually with Chris's guidance and understanding, we were able to put together a selection of around about 10 to 12 emails that over a period of time we would be able to keep in touch with people that had inquired with funeral plans. And again, this was all captured from people that had watched the video and had given up their email address through the Facebook marketing. Because we had the CRM in place, we were able to capture that data and understand that data and effectively follow that data and understand kind of the pattern on what was going on with the consumer. And then the final thing really that we then wanted to concentrate on was Google and Google Ads. Again, something that, rolling back to maybe 18 months to 2 years ago, there wasn't huge amounts of funeral directors using Google Ads, certainly in our area anyway, where now there are a few more that are dabbling, but I do believe, or I do wonder quite how many are doing it in the right way, and quite how many are tracking the Google Ads and the leads in the right way. Probably the biggest thing for me that made my ears prick up was the way that the consumer searches for funeral directors. The consumer is not using terminologies as I thought they were. The way that funeral directors talk and how we refer to certain things is very different actually than how the general public search for an FD. So we did a lot of work into establishing what the search parameters were, what the search demographics were, and then accompanying those keywords into our Google Ads. And the results have kind of been mesmerising really. COVID came along and changed everything. We, in a very short period of time, we had to make the decision to turn off the advertising, and probably if I was working with another company, I probably would have never had that flexibility of being able to call someone and say, Chris, the proverbial has hit the fan and we need to do something. We were able to contact Chris almost instantly, and that was turned off. We also, funerals, as we all know, changed. Funerals were simplified, funeral numbers were changing by the week, and the information that funeral directors were having to give out to families were changing by the day. So what Chris suggested and what we did instantly with Chris is we created a specific COVID landing page and page within our website that gave all of the relevant information to funerals in our area at that given point. And I must have been on the phone to Chris on a daily basis, discussing changes in numbers, changes in policy, changes in regulation, and this was changed instantly. So what gave me the confidence is that I had a page live on my website that gave the most up-to-date and relevant information in my area. And I was really proud to say that we were the market leader in our area of giving the relevant information. I would look at my competitors and they were a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks behind the relevant information, because they were obviously using someone that there was such a process in being able to change information over, and it was changing so regularly. I think they must have just give up in the end, but we didn't. We pride ourselves on giving that really up to date and relevant information to our community, and that was such a huge thing working in the pandemic, and especially when time was at a premium. As we all know, the funeral directors were working all hours, God sent, and long hours, and just unbearable scenarios. You know, the pain and devastation that it caused, and dealing with all of the emotional burden and trying to look after our families in that sensitive way. The last thing on my mind that I wanted to be worried about was my digital advertising, and Chris just oversaw that, and we would have conversations probably a few times a week, and we would update things, and it gave me the peace and confidence that we were giving the right and up-to-date information. Results since working with Chris, so since we've got all of the data since the start of 2020 up to the point of March 2021, we spent £3,000. The return on sales is just shy of £150,000. So of the numbers, these are additional clients that we are looking after. This is on top of our normal planned sales that we would expect to see during this period. It totals effectively just shy of £150,000 in additional sales.
How did that make you feel?
Well, pretty good. It just shows of all the hard work that's put in. There's been a lot of hours testing and measuring, and it also is encouraging to know that there is a bigger audience out there that we can reach out to. We then up the spend slightly, and we've seen in the January period a real return on the additional spend that we went with the Google ads, and it made us realise that actually we were starting to get it right. The impressions were then competing with some of the larger companies, and we doubled the spend again, and we then had our best ever month as far as funeral numbers go, and that has definitely been propped up by the digital advertising. As an individual, looking back at my own personal development over the last 2 years, understanding digital has made me a better business owner. It has given me the confidence to believe in myself and the company that we can grow if we want, and that actually it's in the power's in our hands, essentially, that we now understand what digital marketing is. Before, I look back before, I thought I knew. Actually, in hindsight, I had absolutely no idea. We now budget the digital marketing into our future plans. Everything is all pre-planned now. We have a portfolio of a digital marketing campaign. We talk, and it's one of the biggest factors in our advertising now. We have completely moved away from glossy mags, the traditional form of advertising, and all of our spend really goes on digital. So from a personal point of view, I have learnt a huge amount, and I am much more confident in sitting here and talking about the algorithms and all of the different patterns that we now see with digital advertising. So my confidence as an individual has grown massively. The biggest benefit of working with Chris is the one-to-one contact, the personable approach to business. He now understands my business. He has got to know my business. He's got to know what we do and what our morals and our ethoses are when it comes to what our fundamentals that we've set out. Ease of use, having someone at the end of the phone whenever we need them. The peace of mind knowing that I haven't got to worry about my digital. We have regular meetings and we discuss future plans and spend, and we, most importantly, we sit down and we see what the return on the investment is, and I'm confident to say that that continues to grow. I don't have sleepless nights over worrying, am I putting that money into the right place? Are we seeing a return? Is this the right thing that we should be doing? Is the messaging right? Because there's been so much test and measure now. We're just very gently fine-tuning things, and it really is, our digital has gone from strength to strength. I look at where we are now in comparison to where we were, and we're two different companies, and that's such a huge thing, with the way the world is now. There is no doubt that digital is here to stay. It will only grow bigger and better, and I'm confident to say that we are very much aligned with how the world works. Of course, there's room to grow, there's room to improve, and we will endeavour to continue to do that. But I really do feel that we're in a good place to compete with the world of digital marketing and advertising. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way.